Silverbrook, Wyoming Territory, 1,882. The sharp crack of gunfire shattered the evening calm. 3 shots in rapid succession, 3 men down in the dusty saloon. James Stone stood motionless in the center of the room, his Colt revolver still smoking in his weathered hand. The last wisps of gunpowder hung in the air like ghostly witnesses to what had just occurred. 2 bodies lay sprawled on the sawdust-covered floor, blood pooling beneath them. The third man clutched his shoulder, moaning. At 35, James Stone carried himself like the soldier he once was. 6 feet of hardened muscle and unwavering resolve, his face weathered by sun and sorrow, eyes as cold and gray as winter steel. The war had marked him not just with the scar that ran along his jaw from a Confederate bayonet at Gettysburg, but with an unshakable vigilance that kept him alive through 4 blood-soaked years. Those eyes now surveyed the carnage with neither pride nor remorse, just certainty. These weren't ordinary drunks who'd crossed his path. They were the Blackwell brothers wanted in 3 territories for murder, robbery, and worse. They'd been watching his boy Tyler, following the 4-year-old around town for days. "You threatened my son," James said, his voice low and steady as he approached the surviving Blackwell. Not a question, a statement of fact. The wounded man spit blood onto the floor. "You're dead, Stone. When Reed finds out what you did to his men..." James silenced him with a boot pressed firmly against his wounded shoulder. The man howled. "Reed?" James applied more pressure. "William Reed? What's a Boston Railroad man want with my boy?" "You think it's..." the man gasped. "Coincidence? We showed up after that woman ran. Reed pays good money to find what belongs to him." Before the wounded man could say more, the sheriff burst through the bat-wing doors, shotgun raised. "Jesus Christ, Stone." Sheriff Hayes lowered his weapon, taking in the scene. "The Blackwells?" James nodded, holstering his gun. "They were after Tyler, working for William Reed." The sheriff's expression hardened. He'd known James since the war, 2 northern boys who'd fought side by side at Antietam, where Hayes had taken a bullet meant for James. He knew James Stone didn't draw unless necessary. "Get your boy home, James. I'll clean this up." The ride home was silent. Tyler sat in front of James on the saddle, small hands gripping the horn. The boy hadn't asked questions. At 4 years old, he already understood too much about the violence that occasionally erupted in his father's wake. The storm hit as they crossed Miller's Creek, rain driving sideways like liquid bullets. Thunder rolled across the Wyoming sky, and lightning split the darkness. That's when James saw her, a figure in white, collapsed in the mud by the trail. "Pa, look!" Tyler pointed at the crumpled form. James dismounted, approaching cautiously, one hand on his holster. The figure was a woman in what remained of a wedding dress, now soaked and torn beyond recognition. Blood matted her golden hair, mixing with the rain. "She alive?" Tyler asked, peering from atop the horse. James knelt, pressing fingers to her neck, a pulse, faint but steady. He gently turned her over, revealing a face that, despite the grime and blood, held a rare kind of beauty, not soft or delicate, but determined. Even in unconsciousness, a small wooden box lay clutched in her rigid fingers, as if even in her state she refused to let it go. "We're taking her home," James decided, lifting her with ease. He secured her to his chest with one arm while gripping the reins with his free hand. Tyler touched the woman's cold hand. "Like the story, the princess needs saving?" James didn't answer. He wasn't saving anyone. He was doing what any decent man would do. Nothing more. The stone house stood against the elements like James himself, unyielding, weathered, but intact. Built with his own hands after the war, it wasn't grand, but it was solid. 3 rooms, a stone fireplace, and a roof that didn't leak. It was enough. He laid the woman on his bed, Tyler already fetching clean water and bandages without being told. The boy had learned early how to tend wounds. James had made sure of that. The gash on her head wasn't as bad as the blood suggested. Head wounds always bled worse than they were. James cleaned and stitched it with the same precision he used at his forge. His fingers, calloused from years of metalwork, moved with surprising gentleness. "Pa, her dress is like snow," Tyler whispered, watching from the doorway. "Was snow," James corrected, noting the muddy tears and rips in the once fine fabric. "Now it's just wet cloth." As he worked, he took inventory of other injuries, bruised ribs, a sprained wrist, defensive cuts on her forearms. This woman had fought someone. Hard. Her eyes flew open as he secured the last bandage eyes, the color of a summer storm, wild with fear. She scrambled backward on the bed, panic giving her strength she shouldn't have had. "Please," she gasped, her voice hoarse. "Don't hurt me. I'll work. I can cook, clean anything." James stepped back, giving her space. "Nobody's hurting you here, ma'am." She clutched the wooden box to her chest, knuckles white. "Where am I? Who are you?" "James Stone. This is my son Tyler. You're in Silverbrook. Found you half dead by Miller's Creek." Tyler stepped forward, offering a chipped cup of water. "You're safe now, lady. Pa doesn't hurt nobody unless they're bad men." The woman's gaze darted between them, weighing, judging, deciding whether to believe. She took the water with trembling hands. "Emma," she finally said. "Emma Grace." "Rest," James replied, turning to leave. "Stay till you're healed." 7 words. The most he'd spoken to a stranger in months. That night, James slept by the fire, rifle across his lap. Something wasn't right. The Blackwell brothers hunting Tyler, a beaten woman in a wedding dress appearing on his land. None of it sat well. The storm's fury increased, wind howling through the eaves like lost souls. Just past midnight, the sound James had been half expecting came horses approaching, moving too fast for the weather, too purposeful for innocent travelers. He was on his feet in an instant, rifle ready. "Tyler," he whispered sharply. The boy appeared, rubbing sleep from his eyes. "Get under the floorboards. Take her with you." Tyler nodded, disappearing into the bedroom without question. James positioned himself by the window, watching 2 riders dismount in the driving rain. They moved like professionals, one covering while the other advanced. Not local troublemakers, hired guns. The first man tried the door, finding it barred. "We know she's in there, Stone," he shouted over the storm. "Just give us the woman in the box, and we'll be on our way." James remained silent, measuring angles, distances, options. "You've got 3 seconds before we burn this place to the ground," the second man threatened. James's answer was a rifle shot that sent the speaker's hat flying. The men scattered, diving for cover. What followed wasn't a gunfight so much as a calculated hunt. James Stone hadn't survived Antietam, Gettysburg, and 5 years as a widower in Wyoming by being careless. He moved through his own home like a ghost, anticipating each entry attempt. The first man died coming through the kitchen window, James's knife finding his throat before he cleared the sill. The second made it through the front door, only to meet the butt of James's rifle, then its barrel pressed against his temple. "Who sent you?" James demanded, voice calm despite the violence. "You're dead, Stone," the man spat. "Reed's got a small army coming. That woman stole something from him, something worth killing for." James knocked him unconscious with a single blow, then bound him securely. The night's second prisoner would have more questions to answer come morning. When he lifted the loose floorboard in the pantry, he found Tyler and Emma huddled in the small space beneath. The boy looked scared but resolute. Emma's expression was different, not fear, but a cold fury that matched James's own. "They came for the box," she said, clutching it tighter. "What's in it?" James asked, helping them out. Emma hesitated, then met his gaze directly. "The truth, about William Reed, about what he's done." James studied her for a long moment. "Truth's gotten folks killed before." "Yes," she agreed. "It has." Something unspoken passed between them, an understanding that both had seen enough of the world's darker corners to recognize a kindred spirit. "We leave at first light," James decided. "This isn't your fight, Mr. Stone," Emma protested. James glanced at his son, then at the dead man by the window. "It is now." Dawn broke reluctantly over the eastern ridges, painting the clouds in shades of blood and ash. James had the horses saddled before the sun cleared the horizon. Tyler rode with him, Emma on the mare he kept for hauling supplies. They'd barely reached the edge of town when Sheriff Hayes intercepted them, his expression grim. "You shouldn't have come back here, James." "Need supplies. We're heading north." Hayes shook his head. Too late. Reed's men arrived on the morning train, 12 of them, James. Professional killers, not backwoods thugs. He lowered his voice. "They've got Tyler's name. They know about the boy." James's expression didn't change, but his grip tightened on the reins. "The woman?" Hayes asked, eyeing Emma. "My business," James replied. "Your funeral," Hayes countered. "Reed's offering $500 for her return, $1,000 for that box she's carrying. And you're here to collect?" Hayes looked offended. "I'm here because Margaret Miller's been telling everyone who'll listen that you're harboring a fallen woman. Half the town wants you gone. The other half's too scared to speak up." James's jaw tightened. "Margaret Miller lost her son in a mining accident last year. She's been bitter ever since." "Not just any accident," Emma interjected. "Her son was working on the Western Pacific Bridge when it collapsed. I was a journalist in Boston. I exposed William Reed's father for bribing officials to approve unsafe railway construction. 34 people died in that collapse." "And Reed?" James asked. "Was supposed to be my husband." Her voice turned bitter. "Until I discovered he'd killed a witness to protect his father. It's all documented in this box, the evidence, the witness statements, everything." Hayes whistled low. "Jesus, lady, you picked a fight with the wrong family." "I didn't pick anything," Emma snapped. "I did my job." A church bell rang, the sound cutting through their conversation. Hayes's head jerked toward town. "That's the alarm. They're coming." He drew his revolver, checking the cylinder. "Get to the church. Pastor Howard will hide you in the cellar. I'll buy you time." James clasped his old friend's arm. "Hayes, go." The sheriff cut him off. "I've owed you since Antietam." They parted without another word. James led Emma and Tyler through the back alleys, avoiding the main street where riders were already gathering. The church stood on the town's northern edge, its white steeple rising above the surrounding buildings like an accusing finger pointed at heaven. Pastor Howard met them at the side door, ushering them inside. "Margaret Miller sent word," the pastor explained, leading them toward the cellar stairs. "Said I should turn you away, but I haven't forgotten who pulled my son from that mine collapse last winter." "Miller," James growled. "That woman's hated me since Sarah left." "She's afraid, James. We all are. Reed's men have taken over the sheriff's office. Hayes is pinned down there, fighting for his life. It won't last." A gunshot echoed in the distance, followed by several more in quick succession. Tyler flinched, pressing closer to his father's side. Emma's face hardened, one hand going to the pocket where she'd hidden the box. "This is because of me," she said quietly. "I should just—" "No," James cut her off. "Reed doesn't want justice. He wants silence." He turned to Pastor Howard. "We need weapons." The pastor hesitated only briefly before nodding. "Deacon Fletcher was a gunsmith before finding the Lord. There's a rifle and 2 revolvers in the vestry." "What about the townspeople?" Emma asked. "Most have barricaded themselves in their homes. A few of the younger men might stand with you, but—" Another volley of gunfire interrupted him, closer this time. "Get Tyler to the cellar," James ordered. "Emma, go with them." "I can shoot," she stated flatly. James raised an eyebrow. "My father insisted his daughters could protect themselves," she explained without apology. A small smile, the first she'd seen, briefly crossed James's face. "Get the rifles." The battle for Silverbrook began in earnest as the sun reached its peak. Reed's men had surrounded the church, cutting off escape routes. Hayes was still fighting at the sheriff's office, if the occasional gunfire from that direction was any indication. 6 townsmen had joined James' miners and farmers with more courage than experience, but they held their positions well. Emma proved her claim, dropping 2 of Reed's men from the church's bell tower with precision shots that would have impressed even James's old cavalry commander. The turning point came when Tyler, who was supposed to remain hidden, slipped away from Pastor Howard. The boy had seen riders approaching from the south, not Reed's men, but locals returning from outlying ranches, unaware of the situation. Tyler ran to warn them, breaking cover. One of Reed's men spotted him, grabbing the boy before James could react. "Stone!" the man shouted, dragging Tyler into the open street. "We've got your boy!" James emerged from cover, rifle lowered but not dropped. Across the dusty expanse, a tall figure in an expensive Eastern suit stepped forward. William Reed, his handsome face twisted with arrogance and rage. "The woman in the box, Stone," Reed called. "That's my property you're hiding." "Neither belongs to you," James replied, voice carrying clearly despite its quietness. Reed pressed a revolver to Tyler's head. "I won't ask twice." A terrible stillness fell over the scene. James stood motionless, eyes locked on his son. Tyler didn't cry, didn't struggle, his small face a mirror of his father's resolve. "Your fight's with me, Reed," James said finally. "Let the boy go." "Drop your weapon first," Reed demanded. The rifle hit the dirt. James raised his empty hands. "Now the sidearm," Reed instructed. James complied, removing his Colt and tossing it aside. Reed smiled, cruel and confident. "Now, call your woman out. Tell her to bring me what's mine." "She's not my woman," James replied, "and she doesn't take orders from me." "Then your boy dies." James took a step forward. "You kill him, you'll never leave this town alive." Reed laughed. "Look around, Stone. Your sheriff's as good as dead. Your friends are outgunned. No one's coming to—" A new voice cut through the standoff. "That's where you're wrong, Mr. Reed." Margaret Miller stood at the end of the street, a double-barreled shotgun in her hands. Behind her were at least 20 men and women, similarly armed. "My son died on your father's bridge, Mr. Reed," she called out. "Broke his back when the supports gave way. I have his letter describing the cracks he saw, the warnings your father ignored. I blamed everyone but the real killers, until today." Reed's composure faltered. "This isn't your concern, woman." "It is now," Miller replied, echoing James's words from earlier. "Silverbrook takes care of its own." In the momentary distraction, Tyler bit down hard on his captor's hand. The man yelped, his grip loosening just enough. James was moving before anyone could react, covering the distance in heartbeats. What followed wasn't the honorable shootout of dime novels. It was brutal, efficient violence. James had the gunman on the ground, neck snapped. Before Reed could level his weapon, Tyler ran toward Miller and the townspeople. Reed fired wildly, missing. James was on him in an instant, driving him to the ground with the full force of his rage. Reed fought back with the desperate strength of a man who knew his life hung in the balance. He was younger, fresher, but James fought with the accumulated fury of a man who'd already lost too much. The same fury that had carried him through the blood-soaked wheat fields at Antietam, where he'd bayoneted 3 Confederate soldiers who'd cornered Hayes. Reed's gun discharged once more during the struggle, the bullet tearing through James's side. He barely felt it. His hands closed around Reed's throat, revenge just seconds away. "James, stop!" Emma's voice cut through his battle haze. She stood nearby, the wooden box open in her hands. "He needs to stand trial. The evidence is here, letters, ledgers, witness testimony. If you kill him, it dies with him. All those people who died deserve justice, not vengeance." For a moment, it seemed James wouldn't listen. His grip tightened, Reed's face purpling. Then Tyler's voice, small but clear, "Pa, please." James released Reed, who collapsed, gasping. Blood spread across James's shirt, but he remained standing, immovable as the Wyoming mountains behind him. Sheriff Hayes appeared, bloodied but very much alive, rifle in hand. He limped forward, taking Reed into custody. The remaining gunmen, seeing their employer captured and facing armed townspeople, surrendered. "You're bleeding, Pa," Tyler observed, running to his father's side. James lifted his son with his good arm. "Just a scratch." He looked at Emma, standing with her box of truth finally open to the world. "You all right?" She nodded, something like peace settling over her features for the first time since he'd found her. I am now. Margaret Miller approached, shotgun lowered. Your boy's got courage, Stone, like his father. She glanced at Emma. And it seems I misjudged you, Miss Grace. All these years, I never knew why my son died. Now, we all will. Emma offered a tired smile. Most people do. Misjudge me, that is. Pastor Howard began organizing the townspeople to tend the wounded and secure the prisoners. The battle for Silverbrook was over. The town had stood together, found its courage. As James allowed Emma to bandage his wound, Tyler watched with solemn eyes. Are you leaving now? He asked Emma, since the bad men are gone? Emma's hands stilled. She looked at James, a question in her gaze. That's up to your father, she said carefully. James Stone had spent years saying as little as possible, letting actions speak for him, but some things needed words. We've got room, he said simply, if you want to stay. Emma's smile bloomed slowly, like sunrise over the plains. I'd like that. Tyler beamed, touching the bandage on James's side. See, Pa? Now we can both keep you from getting shot. For the first time in years, James Stone laughed. The courtroom in Cheyenne was packed to capacity the day William Reed stood trial. Emma's evidence proved damning internal memos detailing substandard materials, witness statements describing threats, and Reed's own handwriting ordering the death of a whistleblower. James sat stoic in the gallery, Tyler beside him. Emma took the stand, her testimony clear and unwavering despite Reed's attorney's attempts to discredit her. When asked why she had initially agreed to marry Reed, her answer was simple. I believed he was better than his father. I was wrong. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours. The verdict, guilty on all counts. The sentence, 20 years in the territorial prison. As Reed was led away, he locked eyes with James. No words were exchanged. None were needed. Both men understood that some debts could only be paid one way, and Reed would be paying his for a very long time. Outside the courthouse, a representative from the Western Pacific Railroad approached Emma with an offer of financial compensation for all victims' families and a position for her reporting on corporate accountability. She declined the job but accepted the compensation on behalf of the families. Margaret Miller received enough to rebuild her life. The first thing she did was commission a memorial for the bridge victims, her son's name at the top. 6 months after the trial, the Stone house had changed. A new room had been added. Curtains hung in windows that had been bare for years. Flowers grew where only weeds had flourished. Emma Grace Stone stood on the porch, watching her husband work at the expanded forge. She'd written the full story of the Reed corruption and the Battle of Silverbrook, her first byline since arriving in Wyoming. Newspapers across the country had reprinted it. Tyler raced across the yard, waving a letter. Ma, Pa, it came! Neither James nor Emma corrected the boy's choice of words. Some things didn't need official documents to be true. The letter contained the deed to the adjacent property prime grazing land purchased with the reward money from Reed's conviction. The Stone Ranch was expanding, much like the family itself. As dusk fell, James joined Emma on the porch, his hand finding hers with the ease of familiarity. Never figured on any of this, he admitted, watching Tyler chase fireflies in the gathering darkness. Emma leaned against his shoulder. Sometimes family isn't what you're born into. It's the people you'd fight for, die for. James nodded, the simple truth of it settling into his bones. Honor wasn't about never falling. It was about always getting back up, about fighting for what mattered most. And he'd finally found what mattered not in war or revenge, but here, on this porch, with these people, his family, hard-won and precious beyond measure. Come inside, Emma said softly. Dinner's waiting. James Stone followed her into the warm light of home, closing the door on the darkness behind them. Behind them stood the mountains, solid and eternal. Before them lay the future, uncertain but full of promise. And in this moment, in this house built by his hands and filled with love hard-won, James Stone was finally at peace.